We're finally ready for our last step, which is assembling the actual box. Note that everything I'm showing here is straight off of our list of components, so if you are using something else, that's fine, but your setup might be a little bit different. I already have a few of the pieces set up here. You can see I have my power cable outside, which is what I'll plug into inside of the cabinet, and I have a power converter in here. There's also a button here, which I have attached. You can see on the outside. Most of you probably won't need this because the button will only be necessary if your box is put up on some pole and not inside of the cabinet for your traffic light. It's just there so we can easily turn it on and off just in case the box is in a hard to reach place, which will only be true if it's not inside the cabinet. The purpose of the power converter is to turn our input, which is 120 volts of AC, to 5 volts of DC. You'll want to be especially careful to follow my instructions when hooking this up because it's possible that you could hook things up incorrectly and shock yourself. Let's take a closer look at our power converter. This one is connected to an acrylic piece on the bottom, but I can still show you what's going on. You can see that we have various markings at the top here. The L right there, if you can read that on the very left, stands for load, and that's where we hook up our high power. The N stands for neutral, and then you can see we have the symbol in the middle for ground. These three are for the input to your system. And you can see actually that these wires are just what are coming out of my power cord. And just to reiterate, you can tell sort of by tracing them that the black is the load, that's the high power, the green is the ground, and the white is the neutral. You can see that. Yeah, so they're all just hooked up like that, and they're all just coming out of there. Anyway, you want to make sure that you don't mix these up. In particular, you don't want to hook up your wire for the load, the high voltage, the negative wire, to the ground, because that could then energize the entire case, and then it would be super easy to shock yourself. On the right is where you plug in this piece here, which will actually be the power for the electron. So that's your output piece. You can see that has a negative and a positive, and the way that you tell which side of the wire to plug in where is that the side with the markings, whatever it might be stripes like this or something else, goes on the negative side, and then the straight up black goes on the positive side. I'm actually going to recommend that you get a second person to verify your connections and make sure everything is all right before you connect to the 120 volt outlet. I'll show you how to do that with a voltage tester to make sure you have a correct connection. Alright, I've had my whole setup verified. One last thing before we plug everything in. I just want to point out that there should be a green light that turns on the power converter when everything is hooked up correctly. Even if you've tested everything already, if you don't see that green light, turn everything off. You also shouldn't be touching anything, in particular the power converter, if your box is on. Just a general rule that you should follow for safety is if you ever want to turn on the components of the box, you should close the lid so you can't touch anything. You can also see that I have everything here mounted on this piece of acrylic. Just like the acrylic for the relays, will include schematics to how you should cut this and drill your holes. But you can see there are holes in the bottom of the box that it can screw into. So the next step is to actually assemble the different pieces. I have my whole assembly here from before. I can go ahead and just slide this down the side. As far as attaching the electron, you can just connect it to its breadboard, and then this has an adhesive bottom which you can peel off and stick to the acrylic. And then you can actually do the same thing with your cellular antenna. It has adhesive on the back here. This is pretty sticky, so you probably don't want to try to put it down and pick it back up. Depending on your cellular connection, you may also want to run an antenna outside of your box and outside of your cabinet or up your pole or whatever, instead of having it inside your box, in which case we'll recommend a different antenna for you to use, and you'll need to drill another hole in the box. I'm going to go right ahead and plug in my electron when I'm first powering this up, but you'll probably want to try first plugging in your box and making sure everything's okay, and then unplugging it, plugging in the electron, and trying again once you know everything else is working. And then be sure to close everything up so that you're nice and safe. And then go ahead and try plugging everything in. You can see that I know everything is working all right, because the light on my electron, well, not super visible from this angle. Maybe I can tilt it so you can see. You can see the light on my electron is turned on. Additionally, you can see that there's a green light on my power supply. This should be ready to go and register in the system.